Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Welcome to today's reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, First Canto, Creation, Chapter 9, Passing of Bhishmadeva in the presence of Lord Krishna. We're reading from Chapter 9. This is the title of the chapter, and we'll be concluding the verses today. We'll be beginning from 41 verse, translation and the purports, up to verse 49, which is the conclusion of the chapter. Translation, verse 41. At the Rajasuya Yajna performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, there was the greatest assembly of all the elite men of the world, the royal and learned orders, and in that great assembly Lord Shri Krishna was worshipped by one and all as the most exalted personality of Godhead. This happened during my presence, and I remembered the incident in order to keep my mind upon the Lord. Purport. After gaining victory in the battle of Kurukshetra, Maharaj Yudhishthir, the emperor of the world, performed the Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. The emperor in those days, upon his ascendance to the throne, would send a challenge horse all over the world to declare his supremacy, and any ruling prince or king was at liberty to accept the challenge and express his tacit willingness either to obey or to disobey the supremacy of the particular emperor. One who accepted the challenge had to fight with the emperor and establish his own supremacy by victory. The defeated king would have to sacrifice his life, making a place for another king or ruler. So Maharaj Yudhishthir also dispatched such challenging horses all over the world, and every ruling prince and king all over the world accepted Maharaj Yudhishthir's leadership as the emperor of the world. After this, all rulers of the world under the regime of Maharaj Yudhishthir were invited to participate in the great sacrificial ceremony of Rajasuya. Such performances required hundreds of millions of dollars, and it was not an easy job for a petty king. Such a sacrificial ceremony, being too expensive and also difficult to perform under present circumstances, is now impossible in this age of Kali, nor can anyone secure the required expert priesthood to take charge of the ceremony. So after being invited, all the kings and great learned sages of the world assembled in the capital of Maharaj Yudhishthir. The learned society, including the great philosophers, religionists, physicians, scientists, and all other great sages, was invited. That is to say, the Brahmanas and the Kshatriyas were the topmost leading men in society, and they were all invited to participate in the assembly. The Vaishyas and Shudras were unimportant elements in society, and they are not mentioned herein. Due to the change of social activities in the modern age, the importance of men has also changed in terms of occupational positions. So in that great assembly, Lord Shri Krishna was the cynosure of neighboring eyes. Everyone wanted to see Lord Krishna, and everyone wanted to pay his humble respects to the Lord. Bhishmadeva remembered all this and was glad that his worshipful Lord, the personality of Godhead, was present before him in his actual formal presence. So to meditate on the Supreme Lord is to meditate on the activities, form, pastimes, name, and the fame of the Lord. That is easier than what is imagined as meditation on the impersonal feature of the Supreme. In the Bhagavad-Gita 12.5, it is clearly stated that to meditate upon the impersonal feature of the Supreme is very difficult. It is practically no meditation or simply a waste of time, because very seldom is the desired result obtained. The devotees, however, meditate upon the Lord's factual form and pastimes, and therefore the Lord is easily approachable by the devotees. This is also stated in the Bhagavad-Gita 12.9. The Lord is not different from his transcendental activities. It is indicated also in this shloka that Lord Shri Krishna, while actually present before human society, especially in connection with the battle of Kurukshetra, was accepted as the greatest personality of the time. Although he might not have been recognized as a supreme personality of Godhead, The propaganda that a very great man is worshipped as God after his death is misleading, because a man after his death cannot be made into God, nor can the personality of Godhead be a human being even when he is personally present. Both ideas are misconceptions. The idea of anthropomorphism cannot be applicable in the case of Lord Shri Krishna. Verse 42, translation. Now I can meditate with full concentration upon that Lord Shri Krishna now present before me, because I have transcended the misconceptions of duality in regard to his presence in everyone's heart, even in the hearts of the mental speculators. He is in everyone's heart. The sun may be perceived differently, but the sun is one. Purport: the Lord Shri Krishna is the one absolute supreme personality of Godhead, but he has expanded himself into his multiplenary portions by his inconceivable energy. The conception of duality is due to ignorance of his inconceivable energy. In the Bhagavad-Gita 9.11, the Lord says that only the foolish take him to be mere human beings. Such foolish men are not aware of his inconceivable energies. By his inconceivable energy, he is present in everyone's heart, as the sun is present before everyone all over the world. The Paramatma feature of the Lord is an expansion of his plenary portions. He expands himself as Paramatma in everyone's heart by his inconceivable energy. And he also expands himself as the glowing effulgence of Brahma Jyoti by expansion of his personal glow. It is stated in the Brahma Samhita that the Brahma Jyoti is his personal glow. Therefore, there is no difference between him and his personal glow, that is the Brahma Jyoti, or his plenary portions as Paramatma. Less intelligent persons who are not aware of this consider Brahma Jyoti and Paramatma to be different from Shri Krishna. This misconception of duality is completely removed from the mind of Bhishmadeva, and he is now satisfied that it is Lord Shri Krishna only who is all in everything. This enlightenment is attained by the great Mahatmas or devotees, as it is stated in Bhagavad-Gita chapter 7 verse 19, that Vasudeva is all in everything, and that there is no existence of anything without Vasudeva. Vasudeva, or Lord Shri Krishna, is the original supreme person, as now confirmed by a Mahajan, and therefore both the neophytes and the pure devotees must try to follow in his footsteps. That is the way of the devotional line. The worshipable object of Bhishmadeva is Lord Shri Krishna as Parthasarthi, and that of the gopis is the same Krishna in Vrindavan as the most attractive Shyamsundar. Sometimes less intelligent scholars make a mistake and think that the Krishna of Vrindavan and that of the battle of Kurukshetra are different personalities. But for Bhishmadeva, this misconception is completely removed. Even the impersonalist's object of destination is Krishna as the impersonal Jyoti, and the yogi's destination of Paramatma is also Krishna. Krishna is both Brahma Jyoti and localized Paramatma, but in Brahma Jyoti or Paramatma there is no Krishna or sweet relations with Krishna. In his personal feature, Krishna is both Parthasarthi and Shyamasundar of Vrindavan, but in his impersonal feature, that is the Brahma Jyoti, he is neither in the Brahma Jyoti nor in Paramatma. Great Mahatmas like Bhishmadeva realize all these different features of Lord Shri Krishna, and therefore they worship Lord Krishna, knowing him as the origin of all features. So in his personal feature, Krishna is both Parthasarthi and Shyamsundar of Vrindavan, but in his impersonal feature, he is neither the Brahma Jyoti nor the Paramatma. Verse 43, translation. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishmadeva merged himself in the Supersoul Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight and actions, and thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. Purport: the stage attained by Bhishmadeva while quitting his material body is called the Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord, and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight he began to see the Lord personally present before him, and thus all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are hearing, chanting, remembering, serving the lotus feet, worshipping, praying, executing the orders, fraternizing, and fully surrendering. Any one of them or all of them are equally competent to award the desired result, but they require to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important of them all, and therefore hearing of the Bhagavad-Gita and later on Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishmadeva at the end. The unique situation at Bhishmadev's time of death can be attained even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present. His words of the Bhagavad-Gita or those of Srimad Bhagavatam are identical with the Lord. They are sound incarnations of the Lord, and one can fully utilize them to be entitled to attain the stage of Sri Bhishmadev, who was one of the 8 Vasus. Every man or animal must die at a certain stage of life, but one who dies like Bhishmadev attains perfection, and one who dies forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. That is the difference between a man and an animal. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishmadev. Verse 44, translation. Knowing that Bhishmadev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. Purport: to enter into or to become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. The living beings are all component parts and parcels of the Absolute Personality of Godhead, and therefore they are eternally related with Him as the servitor and the served. The Lord is served by all His parts and parcels as the machine is served by its parts and parcels. Any part of the machine removed from the whole is no longer important. Similarly, any part and parcel of the Absolute detached from the service of the Lord is useless. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and they are no longer as important as the original parts and parcels. There are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord, called Durga Shakti, or the superintendent of the prison house, takes charge of the disintegrated parts and parcels, and thus they undergo a conditioned life under the laws of material nature. When the living being becomes conscious of this fact, he tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus the spiritual urge of the living being begins. This spiritual urge is called Brahma Jigyasa, or inquiry about Brahman. Principally, this Brahma Jigyasa is successful by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service to Lord. Jnana or knowledge means knowledge of everything of Brahman. The supreme renunciation means detachment of material affection, and devotional service is the revival of practice of the original position of the living being. The successful living beings who are eligible to enter into the realm of the Absolute are called the Jnanis, the Yogis, and the Bhaktas. The Jnanis and Yogis enter into impersonal rays of the Supreme, but the Bhaktas enter into the spiritual planets known as the Vakuntas. In these spiritual planets, the Supreme Lord as Narayan predominates, and the healthy, unconditioned living beings live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of servant, friend, parents, and fiancé. There, the unconditioned living beings enjoy life in full freedom with the Lord, whereas the impersonalist Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal glowing effulgence of the Vakunta planets. The Vakunta planets are all self-illuminating like the sun, and the rays of the Vakunta planets are called the Brahma Jyoti. The Brahma Jyoti is spread unlimitedly, and the material world is but a covered portion of an insignificant part of the same Brahma Jyoti. This covering is temporary, and therefore it is a sort of illusion. Bhishmadev, as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vakunta planets where the Lord is his eternal form of Parthasarthi, predominates over the unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The love and affection which bind the Lord and devotee are exhibited in the case of Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Parthasarthi, and the Lord was present personally before Bhishmadev while he was passing to the transcendental world. This is the highest perfection of the Lord. Verse 45, translation. Thereafter both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. Purport. Bhishmadev was respected both by the human beings and by the demigods. The human beings live on earth and similar other planets in the Bhur and Bhuvar group of planets, but the demigods live in the Swar or the heavenly planets. And all of them knew Bhishmadev as a great warrior and devotee of the Lord, as a Mahajan or authority. He was on the level of Brahma, Narada and Shiva, although he was a human being. Qualification on par with the great demigods is possible only on attainment of spiritual perfection. Thus Bhishmadev was known all over the universe, and during his time interplanetary travel was effected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. When the distant planets were informed of the passing of Bhishmadev, all the inhabitants of the upper planets as well as of the earth dropped showers of flowers to show due respect to the departed great personality. This showering of flowers from the heaven is a sign of recognition by great demigods, and it should never be compared to the decoration of a dead body. The body of Bhishmadev lost its material effects due to being surcharged with spiritual realization, and thus the body was spiritualized as when iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not therefore accepted as material. Special ceremonies are observed for such spiritual bodies. The respect and recognition of Bhishmadev are never to be imitated by artificial means, as it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. According to authorized Shastra, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the day when the Lord appears on the earth. Bhishmadev was unique in his activities, and his passing away to the kingdom of God is also unique. Verse 46, translation. O descendant of Bhrigu, Shaunak, after performing funeral rituals for the O descendant of Bhrigu, that is Shaunak Rishi, he has been addressed here. After performing funeral rituals for the dead body of Bhishmadev, Maharaj Yudhishthir was momentarily overtaken with grief. Purport. Bhishmadev was not only a great family head of Maharaj Yudhishthir, but also he was a great philosopher and friend to him, his brothers and his mother. Since Maharaj Pandu, the father of 5 brothers headed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, had died, Bhishmadev was the most affectionate grandfather of the Pandavas and caretaker of the widow daughter-in-law Kunti Devi. Although Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the elder uncle of Maharaj Yudhishthir, was there to look after them, his affection was more on the side of his 100 sons, headed by Duryodhan. Ultimately, a colossal clique was fabricated to deprive the 5 fatherless brothers of the rightful claim of the kingdom of Hastinapur. There was great intrigue common in imperial palaces, and the 5 brothers were exiled to the wilderness. But Bhishmadev was always a sincerely sympathetic well-wisher, grandfather, friend and philosopher to Maharaj Yudhishthir. Even up to the last moment of his life, he died very happily by seeing Maharaj Yudhishthir to the throne. Otherwise, he would have long ago quitted his material body instead of suffering agony over the undue sufferings of the Pandavas. He was simply waiting for the opportune moment, because he was sure and certain that the sons of Pandu would come out victorious on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, as his lordship Sri Krishna was their protector. As a devotee of the Lord, he knew that the Lord's devotee cannot be vanquished at any time. Maharaj Yudhishthir was quite aware of all these good wishes of Bhishmadev, and therefore he must have been feeling the great separation. He was sorry for the separation of a great soul and not for the material body which Bhishmadev relinquished. The funeral ceremony was a necessary duty, although Bhishmadev was a liberated soul. Since Bhishmadev was without issue, the eldest grandson, namely Maharaj Yudhishthir, was the rightful person to perform this ceremony. It was a great boon to Bhishmadev that an equally great son of the family undertook the last rites of a great man. Verse 47, translation. All the great sages then glorified Lord Sri Krishna, who was present there, by confidential Vedic hymns. Then all of them returned to their respective hermitages, bearing always Lord Sri Krishna within their hearts. Purport. The devotees of the Lord are always in the heart of the Lord. The Lord is always in the hearts of the devotees. That is the sweet relation between the Lord and his devotees. Due to unalloyed love and devotion for the Lord, the devotees always see him within themselves, and the Lord also, although he has nothing to do and nothing to aspire to, is always busy in attending to the welfare of his devotees. For the ordinary living beings, the law of nature is there for all actions and reactions, but he is always anxious to put his devotees on the right path. The devotees, therefore, are under the direct care of the Lord, and the Lord also voluntarily puts himself under the care of his devotees only. So all the sages headed by Vyasadeva were devotees of the Lord, and therefore they chanted the Vedic hymns after the funeral ceremony just to please the Lord, who was present there personally. All the Vedic hymns are chanted to please Lord Krishna. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 15, verse 15. All the Vedas, Upanishads, Vedanta, etc. are seeking him only, and all hymns are for glorifying him only. The sages therefore performed the exact acts suitable for the purpose, and they happily departed for their respective hermitages. Verse 48, translation. Thereafter Maharaj Yudhishthir at once went to his capital Hastinapur, accompanied by Lord Sri Krishna, and there he consoled his uncle and aunt Gandhari, who was an ascetic. Purport. Dhritarashtra and Gandhari, the father and mother of Duryodhan, and his brothers were the elder uncle and aunt of Maharaj Yudhishthir. After the battle of Kurukshetra, the celebrated couple, having lost all their sons and grandsons, were under the care of Maharaj Yudhishthir. They were passing their days in great agony over such a heavy loss of life, and were practically living the life of ascetics. The death news of Bhishmadev, uncle of Dhritarashtra, was another great shock for the king and the queen, and therefore they required solace from Maharaj Yudhishthir. Maharaj Yudhishthir was conscious of his duty, and he at once hurried to the spot with Lord Krishna and satisfied the bereaved Dhritarashtra with kind words from both himself and the Lord also. Gandhari was a powerful ascetic. Although she was living the life of a faithful wife and a kind mother, it is said that Gandhari also voluntarily blindfolded her eyes. Because of the blindness of her husband, a wife's duty is to follow the husband 100%, and Gandhari was so true to her husband that she followed him even in his perpetual blindness. Therefore, in her actions, she was a great ascetic. Besides that, the shock she suffered because of the wholesale killing of her 100 sons and her grandsons also was certainly too much for a woman. But she suffered all this just like an ascetic. Gandhari, although a woman, is no less than Bhishmadev in character. They are both remarkable personalities in the Mahabharata. Now, the last verse of chapter 9, canto 1. Translation. After this, the great religious king Maharaj Yudhishthir executed the royal power in the kingdom strictly according to the codes of royal principles approved by his uncle and confirmed by Lord Sri Krishna. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthir was not a mere tax collector. He was always conscious of his duty as a king, which is no less than that of a father or spiritual master. The king is to see to the welfare of the citizens from all angles of social, political, economic, and spiritual upliftment. The king must know that human life is meant for liberating the engaged soul from the bondage of material conditions, and therefore his duty is to see that the citizens are properly looked after to attain this highest stage of perfection. Maharaj Yudhishthira followed these principles strictly, as will be seen from the next chapter. Not only did he follow the principles, but he also got approval from his old uncle who was experienced in political affairs, and that was also confirmed by Lord Krishna, the speaker of the philosophy of Bhagavad-Gita. Maharaj Yudhishthira is the ideal monarch, and monarchy under a trained king like Maharaj Yudhishthira is by far the most superior form of government, superior to modern republics or governments of the people, by the people. The mass of the people, especially in this age of Kali, are all born Shudras, basically low-born, ill-trained, unfortunate and badly associated. They themselves do not know the highest perfectional aim of life. Therefore, votes cast by them actually have no value, and thus persons elected by such irresponsible votes cannot be responsible representatives like Maharaj Yudhishthira. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Passing Away of Bhishmadeva in the Presence of Lord Krishna. So thus ends our reading, which we started for 2021 Bhishmapanchaka. Thank you for joining. Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.